Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis from St. C Academy. I am the legacy owner. Inherited this school from my parents, Sylvia Davis and the late William Edward Davis Sr. St. C Academy is an African centered school for students K through 12, and we have been here since 1996. Um, Last weekend, I had the opportunity to do a science presentation for the Council of Independent Black Institutions, which is an organization for private African centered schools or independent African centered schools for a teacher training program that they have. Um, we we had several presenters on ELA, how to present ELA through an African lens, math. Um, I did the science, and we had a presenter for history, and which focused on uh, the legacy of building a social studies structure where our children learn the legacy, the history of their families. And the ELA focused on the languages, language development from ancient Kemet, and compared it to different ethnic groups in West Africa. And of course, the math was similar to that. It built on the legacy of mathematical concepts and ways to introduce those to African American children and their parents. Um, and so my science unit focused on forces and the development of six simple machines and the African influence on those particular areas of science. Every year, I introduce my students to these concepts because, of course, um, a lot of times, unfortunately, African Americans are left out of the science. We have Our ancestors have been on this planet since, the beginning. We were the first humans here, and yet when any aspect of the curriculum is introduced, um, there may be a statement saying, oh, the earliest people or ancient people believed this. And then we jump right into a European scientist or a European worldview of the science and completely neglecting our the knowledge of Africans and their contributions to the fields of science. And I have already in the past, introduced, boating, the influence of Africans on shipbuilding and boating, on astronomical knowledge, music knowledge, and the development and other subjects. But this one, forces, is an actual topic that I teach um, students from physics down to, I think, the earliest introduction is like grade 4 or 5. Um, so when Dr. Greg Carr introduced this to me, and I know how I'm sure plenty of people have helped contributed to this Africana framework, but for teaching, for instruction, but for me, I use the Africana framework for science and technology, and I'm just going to read it real quickly. This category asks the question: what type of ideas about how nature works in science did people develop, and or what devices did people create to shape their natural, animal, and human environments? And answers to this question will differ depending on the people being studied, and students should be encouraged to identify the relationship between culture, science, and technology. So for me, what that means is that what types of ideas about how nature works does people develop? So we know that Africans had, we were the first ones here. So we had to observe the stars. And after some point, we began to notice there were patterns about the stars. We identified storms, and so we understood the force of the winds, what the power of the rain, the power of electricity when we saw the lightning storms, the power of flooding, what happens when you have too much rain. We understood the power of the sun, and the heat that it generated, the impact on plants being raised, growing. So we knew it was a life source. Um, so we knew these forces, these basic forces: air, wind, fire, and electricity, and earth. Um, that these were the prevalent forces on this planet. And we had to figure out how to navigate these. We also uh, understood geology. We used stones. We invented stone tools, and we learned how to manage animal life. We learned the value of plant life for medicinal nourishment, nutrition, all of those things. And so we were constantly having to, like, well, everything was new, and over a period of time, we mastered our understanding of these natural forces in our environment, and we deified them. We created a cosmology or a religious practice, honoring, respecting, and people would say worshiping these these forces that we had deified, and then we also found a way to manipulate them to create something new. And so how did we shape them? What happened in North Africa, what happened in Southern Africa, what happened in the Western region of Africa, and what happened in the Eastern area. And so, depending on the environment, depending on whether you lived in the Sahara Desert, or if you lived in a rainforest, or you lived in a savanna, what did you have to do to survive in that area, to build your own build to build a shelter, to like I said, cure yourself of illnesses, get access to water, and how did you develop your food? And so that would be my first unit. So, what is a force? So, because I teach, like I said, children ages 7 through 12, I develop a curriculum that always begins with African Americans, or African people. Sorry, not African Americans. We the last ones on we're the latest version of what it means to be African. But so what is a force? It's a push and a pull. It's a force can be the wind blowing something, a piece of paper across the street. A force can be throwing a basketball into a basketball hoop, or in my case, striking a tennis ball with either a top spin or a slice, or just a flat hit, contact. Let's see. There are several forces on the earth. We've got gravity, we've got buoyancy, we've got applied force, we have electromagnetism, we have friction, spring, drag, and nuclear forces that occur in atoms and protons and neutrons inside of an atom, and we have a radioactive atom. So, what are some African forces in cosmology? So, the one that I'm most familiar with, I mean, I have an idea a little bit about the Kemetic ones, or ancient Egyptian cosmology, but the one I'm most familiar with is Ifa, which is practiced by the Yoruba people. And our ancestors named these forces, and today I refer to the spiritual that spiritual system. So when the Yoruba consider the wind or the ancestors, they say, "Oh yeah." For water, Yemenja. For fire, Shango. For iron, metal, or what we would consider the earth, Ogun. Ogun also symbolizes civilization and advancement. Um, you have a Chosi, justice and balance, and so you operate in with a just attitude, respect for for nature, and balance, not doing more, taking more than you need, and making sure that life can continue itself, right? Um, and then rivers, Oshun, and the karmic force of the universe, reciprocity, Eshu. So our ancestors identified the characteristics of these forces, and like I said, they deified them to gain better of understanding of how to interact with them. With their knowledge, they developed an applicable approach that was passed down through oral traditions, apprenticeships, and mastery in their families and clans. And so when researching the hunter gatherers, so the hunter gatherers would be the first group of people here, and on the planet, and some of these may not necessarily have been uh, well, Homo sapiens, but they were, there's several branches of Homo sapiens, but these early people would be the ones who created stone tools, and so 2 million years ago, they have discovered that the San people of Ethiopians, people from Kenya, and people of the Niger Delta in Dartichet, which I mean, which was around 10,000 BC, which I've already talked to you all about, and Gengeno, 4,000 BC. We find that in the Nox civilization, of course, we find that Africans had already domesticated animals. They had developed the cultivation of grains and were smelting metals and were building civilization. So by 10,000 BC, we had gotten to those things. But in our more ancient times, we were still using stone tools. What do we do with these stone tools? We use them to dig, we use them to crush uh, grains or vegetables or fruits or whatever plants that we were trying to consume, and we also they to cut flowers or cut animals. They were also used to uh, break bones for for like chicken bones, or fowls or whatever, or antelope or whatever. But they used these stones initially for multiple reasons. Um, uh, so here the orishas, I had, or in this my presentation, I had examples of the orishas, but um, for gravity, where do we see gravity? When you bounce a ball, you see gravity when you throw something up in the air and it comes back down. You also see the axis of rotation if you hold a ball on your finger and it spins. That requires balance and understanding of how to maintain a certain speed on the ball so that the ball won't fall off. You also have, like I said, top spin and slice. You have applied forces when you push up against an object, when you roll a wheelbarrow, when you are pulling a rope with not tug of war, but I'm thinking more when I was in Sierra Leone, or on the coast of Jamaica, you would see the fishermen pulling ropes in uh, with their daily catch. Um, Buoyant nuclear force is the splitting of an atom, or breaking the molecular connection between atoms. Uh, when you boil water, um, you're separating the hydrogen and the oxygen atoms from each other, and turns into water vapor or gas. It changes states of matter. So our ancestors were also doing that. They were first to understand how to change a solid to a liquid, a liquid to a solid, to liquid to with a sublimation, a solid to a gas, which would be you know, I'm trying to think, or gas to solid, condensation, um, sublimation. Okay, I've got another word that is decomposition, something like that. Anyway, I can't remember all of the terms, but you have this solid, liquid, gas, plasma understanding that you can change things by applying heat. Um, and so that all of those are examples of forces. And then of course you got friction. How do you uh, make sure things can move smoothly, or give some sort of level of resistance? And then you have drag, and I would say those would see those when you're um, sailing a boat. What is the purpose of the sail? The sail is to either increase speed or reduce speed, or to change direction of the boat. And so these are all concepts that we developed and our ancestors developed in order to deal with their environment, to live in there and live in the space that they are in. And so, and a lot of times, like I said, we don't get credit for that. Those things are kind of glossed over, and considered to be prehistory. And I'm like, the audacity to call us prehistory. Just the racism in that statement alone. Um, let's see. So, what are some of the things that we did? Okay, so I've got here the metallurgy, gold. Gold in its natural state. You have iron and bronze. This is raw. I have a picture of a piece of gold in this one, and but all of us know what gold is, and you get people wear it. And then you have uh, metal, metallic, um, a magnetite, which is a rock that is found all over in West Africa, and uh, our ancestors. It was a magnetic rock, so and I've got a couple next door. But if you put it beside a magnet, the magnet will stick to this rock. So our ancestors figured out how to melt this rock. It requires a heat of 3,000 degrees to melt of magnetite. Then, after they melted the rock, well, first of all, how do you melt a rock? So they had to create these ovens made from termite hills, and the reason why they used those is that they had already been oxidized. Termites had moved through the clay, and so the clay um, had it was porous. So air and water could flow through it, right? So they used this, and then they took dried grass and they called it flux, and they mixed these together and created this oven out of that. And then they designed it so it had a hole in the top. So air. I mean the it could release toxins. And then they also constructed these tubes on the side out of the same clay, so that they could control the heat that was flowing into the oven. And then you would see the the rock would melt. And so then, after they melted it, they would mold it and shape it into the tool that they wanted. The spear, the sword, the the digging tool, whatever they needed. And what is amazing is that after they have melted this rock, this this metal reconstitutes itself and is now still magnetic. And so the genius of our ancestors um, to create these ovens, to think that they could even accomplish this, create an oven that could achieve a heat of 3,000 degrees. It most of us, our stoves don't go past 500, but our ancestors had created something that could get up to 3,000 degrees, about 3,000 degrees, and melt these rocks. So that level of knowledge and expertise, and we were the first ones to do that. We were smelting gold at 6,000 BC. The Ethiopians were doing that. When you go back and look at one of the things they said about Dartichit, which is in the area of Ouagadougou, that's near Mali. I think I've talked to you all about that. Mali and Mauritania and Senegal, Gambia, that area. Geno is there too. They said there were uh, several, not just one iron pit, but there were several locations in that in Dartichit where you had iron smelting pits all over. So I mean, they were really like they mastered this thing. Um, and so and then you also have the bronze statues, and so our this is Benin. That's also and then you got the Nok civilization with the clay, the terracotta. So our people were really mastering these different aspects. Oh, there you go. Of there's the gold and there's the iron and there's the bronze. Thank you so much. And so we were developing high quality um, uh, products prehistory. Prehistory. So it's unbelievable to me. And so then the my next area of presentation was Newton's three laws of motion. So the law of motion is there you go. Thank you. An object will stay in uniform motion unless a net force acts on the object. So inertia is the tendency of an object to resist any change in motion. So what would this be? An object will stay in motion. So what did Africans use, or how did they demonstrate this? Well, if you've seen a bow and arrow, um, our ancestors, the tips of these arrows are designed like a bird's beak, right? They've got this curvature here, from from my finger to my thumb, and so in that you'll see they designed it to be sharp and pointed, and they so that it could penetrate the air, right? Because you got the air going over and under um, the spear, or if it's split or split, it's either splitting this way or splitting this way, right? So, so it's the thrust and all that, right, of the arrow. Then they also understood the tension. So when you're pulling the arrow back, right, on the bow, you there are degrees of tension. So you got this. If you pull stop on at one point, it may not go as far, but the further back you pull it, the more motion that arrow is going to have, or that spear is going to have. So inertia is a tendency of an object to resist any change in motion. It will not stop. It will keep going. And so that was our gift to man, the first weapon of the spirit, the bow and the arrow, and our spears, and then swords. Um, as he force is the product of mass and acceleration. The greater the mass of the object, the smaller its change in motion will be given force. Where do we see that? Okay, so our in the mountains of several African communities, one of the ways that they dealt with this force, mass and acceleration, were to use the strategy of collecting boulders, middle size to enormous sizes, and rolling them up if they live in the mountainous areas, like I said, they would roll them to the top of the hills, right? And in fact, it was a rites of passage for young men to be able to roll those boulders up those inclined planes uh, to the top of these mountains. And they were, and this is also, inertia. They would, if their village was attacked, they would roll those, use a lever to roll those boulders down the hill. Um, Now, I've also heard a beautiful story about what happened in villages in Sierra Leone during their struggle with slave catchers. Um, there were ways that they would take villagers to, the villagers would uh, gather and move everybody, escape the village and move to the highest peak and they or highest elevation, and the women would hide, and then the men would also do the same thing. They would roll boulders down on the slave catchers. And so I think that's a really good example of a greater the mass of the object, the smaller in its change in motion will be for a given force. And this means that the same force will cause an object with a small mass to accelerate more than an object with a large mass. You can't stop an object with a large mass. It just is going to keep going. Um, Newton's third law of motion: when one object exerts a force on the second object exerts a force on the first. And these forces are equal in strength and opposite in direction. Um, with that one, I would think the when you're paddling a boat, you're pulling and you're going back. And so when you're going this way, the boat is going forward. So our ancestors developed paddles. You had some boats. The crew people had boats that could had like 80 people stirring the boat. Um, that's a lot of people. I was like 80 people on a boat, okay. And I don't know whether that was double or is that one long canoe, but they were known for having as many boats the size to accommodate 80 paddlers or whatever they would call it, rowmen or whatever. And so that you're going opposite, an opposite motion. You're exerting a force on the boat, on the water, on the paddle, and it's propelling you forward. So the forces are equal in strength and opposite in direction. So you're going that way, but you're pushing yourself forward. And so, yeah, that would be an example of what that those forces would be. But that is, I'm almost at the end of my presentation, but um, a lot of the things that happen, like I said, in the classroom, is that these objects are never seen through the lens of African Americans. Oh, and here's the iron smelting. So this is the one what I was describing. This here, the middle picture is of an oven, and you can see the fire, the smelting iron inside that pot. And I saw a lot of this when I was in Sierra Leone. They had, of course, they were contemporary structures that they were using to smelt iron, but you still had like people, you had young people, the children, everybody gathered around to smelt these rocks or learn apprenticing this knowledge, learning this knowledge from the elders, the children, elders, and the apprentices, all of them together. And so this knowledge is very important. And so I will conclude this unit and I will talk about it more next week. But yeah, these are the stone tools in South Africa 2 million years ago. So thank you so much. And I will see you all next week. Ashe.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.